The transport bay of the ironclad Mercy hummed with the familiar rhythm of deep space travel, but something had changed aboard the vessel. Commander Ravik noticed it first, the way his squad moved through the corridors with an unusual spring in their step, their fur groomed to an almost ceremonial sheen. The Kethri were a warrior species, built for combat with their powerful frames covered in dense, protective fur that ranged from slate gray to deep obsidian. For generations they had fought wars across 3 systems, their appearance deliberately kept rough and intimidating. Battle scars were worn with pride, and grooming was considered a wasteful vanity reserved for peacetime, a time that never seemed to arrive. But now, as Ravik observed his second-in-command, Lieutenant Yara, he couldn't help but notice the sleek, almost lustrous quality of her usually matted coat. She caught his stare and straightened, her amber eyes defiant. "Sir?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Your fur," Ravik said simply, his gravelly voice echoing in the corridor. "It looks different." Before Yara could respond, a chorus of excited chittering erupted from the rec room. Ravik's ears twitched toward the sound. The cubs. 3 Kethri younglings had been rescued from a destroyed colony ship 2 weeks prior, and the squad had taken them in temporarily until they could be delivered to a safe world. The cubs had brought an unexpected lightness to the battle-hardened crew. Ravik pushed past Yara and entered the rec room. The sight that greeted him was unprecedented. All 3 cubs, Mika, Torin, and little Seth, sat in a neat row, their fur brushed and gleaming. Around them stood half of his elite combat squad, warriors who had survived the siege of Corvana, soldiers who had held the line at Theta Outpost, veterans whose names were spoken with reverence in military academies. And every single one of them looked immaculate. Sergeant Thomas's, whose scarred face had once graced recruitment posters as the very image of Kethri ferocity, had his silver-streaked fur combed back in neat rows. Corporal Ven's coat practically shimmered under the overhead lights. Even the normally disheveled Private Kess looked like she could attend a diplomatic function. And there, sitting cross-legged on the floor with little Seth in her lap, was the human, Myra Solon. The xenobiologist had been assigned to the ironclad Mercy 3 months ago to study Kethri combat physiology. She was small by human standards, impossibly tiny compared to the Kethru, with dark skin and coiled black hair that she kept pulled back in what she called braids. Her presence had been tolerated, if not entirely welcomed, by the crew. Humans were still new to the galactic stage, their species only recently achieving faster-than-light travel. In Myra's hand was an object Ravik didn't recognize, a flat implement with hundreds of thin bristles, worn smooth from use. "Commander," Mika chirped, scrambling to her feet. "Look! Miss Myra taught us about grooming. She says humans do it every day, sometimes twice." Ravik's gaze shifted to Myra, who looked up with an expression that was equal parts guilty and amused. "It's just a hairbrush," she said, holding up the implement. "The cubs found it in my quarters and were curious. I was showing them how humans maintain their hair." "Hair," Ravik repeated, the word foreign and strange in his mouth. "Yes, hair, like your fur, but—" "Well, different." Myra stood, gently setting Seth down. "Among humans, grooming is part of our daily routine. It's hygienic, yes, but it's also," she paused, searching for the right word, "affirming. It helps us feel put together, confident. We are warriors," Ravik said, though his protest sounded weak even to his own ears. "We do not need to feel put together. Don't you?" Myra's voice was soft, but her dark eyes were sharp. "Commander, your squad has been on active deployment for 18 standard months. You've lost people. You've seen things that would break most species." She gestured to the soldiers around her, all watching the exchange with rapt attention. "When was the last time any of you did something for yourselves that wasn't about survival or duty?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sergeant Thomas's cleared his throat, his deep voice rumbling through the silence. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Ravik nodded, still staring at Myra. "It feels good," Thomas's admitted, and several others murmured agreement. "When the cubs found the human's brush and she showed us how to use it properly, I don't know, it reminded me of before the war. My mother used to groom my fur when I was young, before I enlisted. I'd forgotten what that felt like." Little Torin tugged on Ravik's armored leg. "You should try it, Commander." Miss Myra says taking care of yourself isn't weak, it's necessary. Humans even have a saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Ravik looked down at the cub, then back at Myra. The human held out her hairbrush, a simple gesture that somehow felt monumental. It's just a brush, she said again, but her smile suggested she knew it was more than that. Slowly, Ravik reached out and took the implement. It was worn, the handle shaped by years of use, warm from Myra's grip. He turned it over in his large hands, studying the bristles. How does one use this? He asked, and was rewarded with delighted gasps from the cubs. For the next hour, Mara Solon taught Commander Ravik and the rest of his squad about the human art of grooming. She explained different techniques, showed them how to work through tangles without pain, and even demonstrated on her own hair, unbraiding it and brushing it smooth before rebraiding it with practiced efficiency. The transformation was remarkable, as each soldier took their turn with the brush supplemented by grooming tools they fashioned from equipment stores. The atmosphere in the rec room shifted. Laughter rang out, genuine and unforced. Stories were shared. Seth fell asleep in Corporal Ven's arms, purring contentedly. Later, as the crew dispersed to their duties, Ravik found Myra in the corridor, returning the now legendary hairbrush to her quarters. "Thank you," he said simply. Myra paused, turning to face him. "For what?" "For reminding us that we're more than just warriors. That taking care of ourselves isn't a luxury, it's essential." Ravik's expression softened, a rare sight. "We haven't looked this bold since before the war. And we haven't felt this alive in longer than I care to admit." Myra's smile was warm. "That's the thing about humans, Commander. We learned a long time ago that survival isn't just about fighting. It's about maintaining your spirit, your sense of self. Even in the darkest times, especially in the darkest times, small acts of self-care can be revolutionary." As she walked away, hairbrush in hand, Ravik touched his own fur, now smooth and carefully groomed. He stood a little taller, felt a little stronger. The cubs had discovered a simple hairbrush, but what they'd really found was something the Kethray had nearly lost. The understanding that warriors could be both fierce and gentle, both strong and tender. And it had taken a human small, seemingly fragile, but undeniably wise to show them the way. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.